It's easy and sometimes fun and sometimes scary to toss around the one heartbeat away from the presidency line about a potential vice president. Sure, it's one thing to figure out how they help a presidential candidate get elected, but imagining a candidate for vice as president means we've got to think about their leadership styles, their governing styles, their record. To that end, the New York Times reported on Sarah Palin's leadership style this weekend, and between the options of easy, fun, or scary, they found the prospect of Palin being one heartbeat away from the presidency to lean hard toward the scary option in a George Bush, Dick Cheney vice presidency kind of way. The paper found that as Wasilla mayor, Sarah Palin ordered city employees not to talk to the press. As governor, she and her top aides use personal email addresses to discuss state business. Why? In order to make the administration hopefully immune to public records requests and subpoenas. And all along the way, Palin has left a trail of fired professionals in her wake, replaced by friends from school and church. As the Times put it, quote, the Wasilla High School yearbook archive now doubles as a veritable directory of state government. Disturbing secrecy? Seems like it. Rampant cronyism? Looks that way. Hello, Liberty University. The ability to mangle the truth with a straight face?
And that infamous bridge to nowhere, I did tell Congress, thanks, but no thanks. If we wanted a bridge up there, we were going to build it ourselves.
That's not true. What's left? Dangerous hawkishness and a clear lack of understanding of foreign policy? Well, Palin did give the old perhaps so to Charlie Gibson when he asked about a possible war with oil-rich, nuclear-armed Russia. Like I said, scary. I need to be talked down here, but I probably won't be by my guest tonight, the New York Times columnist who calls the specter of a McCain-Palin administration an urgent matter, Frank Rich. Hi, Mr. Rich.
How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for coming into the studio.
Thanks for having me.
Do you think that Sarah Palin's celebrity status, her sort of outshining John McCain in the media and on the campaign trail right now, was a surprise to John McCain?
That's a great question. I think probably he's not enough aware of what's going on to even be surprised or not surprised. I think he rolled the dice. I'm sure he's happy with this. He probably didn't anticipate it. Probably went beyond their expectations. But there's, of course, a downside to it for him, which it raises the question of who's really running the show and, you know, who's really going to be the stronger person should they get to the White House.
In your column this weekend, you essentially described a John McCain who was weak, hapless, unaware, raising the prospect that there are other people who are calling the shots. Do you see overt evidence that McCain isn't making his own decisions, or is it circumstantial evidence because we don't believe he would make decisions like this?
Well, I think that he probably made this decision in a fashion, but we know perfectly well that he wanted Joe Lieberman to be his ticket mate.
Right.
And Joe Lieberman, whatever one thinks of his politics, is a plausible person to stand in should the president become incapacitated. But he didn't want to stand up to the base. He wanted to placate the base of his party, and that's why Sarah Palin happened. So is that really his decision? Did the Maverick really stand up for what he believes in and fight his own party and fight Washington? No, he crumbled, like a $2 bill or whatever the appropriate cliche is, and now we have Sarah Palin.
Well, it seems to me like that is the most likely explanation of how we got Sarah Palin as the VP pick. But it seems like there's one other option, too, which is that he did make a look into my eyes and see my soul gut check sort of decision. That maybe he wanted to pick Tom Ridge or he wanted to pick Joe Lieberman, but then he met her and they were soulmates. And it was just, I've only met you once. I don't know anything about you, but I want you to be in the East Wing of the White House.
But I think he spent more time with Larry Craig than he did with Sarah Palin. I don't know if he could have made this decision. But no, I think he likes Ridge. Ridge is pro-choice. And what about Mike Bloomberg, who really is a good friend of McCain's and who actually might know something about the economic meltdown we're in, but is also pro-choice and pro-gay rights, neither of which play with the base of that party. So he certainly, look, even Karl Rove said he put a political choice ahead of a governing choice, and now we've got it, but we've got it with a guy who's 72 years old, a cancer survivor, and seems to have lost a step.
In terms of what we know of Sarah Palin, and you're raising the specter that it really would be a Palin presidency, either in name or just in fact, what do you see in terms of what we know about her record, her positions, her style, her political trajectory? How do you think that we could describe her in terms of other politicians who we know better? Who would you use as reference points?
maybe Mayberry, Andy Griffith. She's a hard right, card-carrying member of the social conservatives of that party. She has a modest record, which we can't fully get at. Witness the news you've been talking about tonight, governing Alaska over a very short period of time. And to me, she just represents, she's really like a less talented Mike Huckabee with less accomplishment than Mike Huckabee. But that's the part of the party she's representing. One thing I find amazing, particularly given the financial news today, is the Republican Party is still supported financially by a lot of people on Wall Street, a lot of people who are big in American business, and you think they look at a presidential candidate who admits he doesn't know anything about the economy and someone with no experience as a vice presidential candidate except managing a town of several thousand people, and I think that's what our investment is going into, that's what the future is going into.
Well, but maybe that's the point, though. Maybe they look at, maybe those sort of interests, look at John McCain, who says, I don't know anything about the economy, I've got Greenspan's book, looking at Sarah Palin, who didn't seem to understand what an entitlement program was when she was asked on economic issues by Charlie Gibson, and they think, perfect, empty vessel. They know nothing, and they know nothing, so let's use them to advance a special interest agenda, the kind of agenda that we can push through with strong-minded advisors who talk well. And these people won't resist in any way because they don't have any ideas of their own.
Well, you may be right, but I would add that the social conservative movement, which has some very strong people within that party, may have other ideas. Indeed, this was true of Huckabee, that were in war with Republican establishment ideas in terms of the economy. So it's going to be complicated. They should be careful what they wish for. I'm not sure it would necessarily turn out according to plan. One
last question for you today, and just in terms of today's and yesterday's news in the financial markets and this incredibly awful day on Wall Street, the worst one-day plunge since just after 9/11, Lehman Brothers, AIG on the horizon, all of these other things going on. In terms of today's news cycle and the presidential campaign, who came off looking better in the mainstream media, in the big picture on the campaign trail between the two candidates?
I would slightly give the edge to Obama because he had one really good line finally, though. What economy is he talking about? Yeah. And McCain had to somehow have this Rube Goldberg explanation of why the fundamentals are still strong and turn into an attack on American workers. But I would say both are lacking. McCain still seemed out of touch, and Obama, to me, has not taken charge of this issue. And really, the news cycle was dominated by, in some ways, your sister network, CNBC, and what was going on there, not by any politician. I see. The opportunity is there for Obama to dominate on this issue. I'm not sure he's not doing it yet. Yeah, I don't think so yet. Frank Rich, columnist for the New York Times. So nice to have you in studio. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for having me.